Okay, we had some technical difficulties. I think we've fixed them. Mr. Calderon? Mr. Hagman, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Parliamentary inquiry. Just wondering if the Democratic caucus or Democratic analysis has been produced yet. We haven't seen them be delivered, so.
We're going to take it up without reference.
You haven't got your analysis yet, Chair.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 77 to allow the following matters to be taken up without reference to file today in special session: AB 26X, AB 27X.
Without objection, clerk will read. AB 26X, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 26 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to redevelopment and make an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, we have two trailer bills in a redevelopment package. SB 14X1, which is the RDA phase-out, and the creation of an RDA alternative program. I'm going to present both of them together since they really work hand in hand. Before I begin, I want to state a few points up front. First, through the magic of contingent enactment, the reform of RDAs as we know it cannot take place unless we first create a new RDA program. So we'll take up the vote for SB 15X and then SB 14X1 in sequence. Second, this bill is not an assault on redevelopment. It fixes a flawed funding mechanism and validates our commitment to protecting education in this budget. Madam Speaker, may I have attention to the floor? Thank you, Madam Speaker. Both of these bills before us today provide an opportunity for RDAs to continue their redevelopment activities under local control through participation in alternative redevelopment programs and make voluntary payments to help our schools. The bill also provides general fund savings in the 2011-2012 year of $1.7 billion, equal to the governor's plan, and ongoing savings of a lesser amount, about $400 million. Here's how it works. The plan retains the full low and moderate income housing set-aside after a one-year suspension. Participation in the plan by cities and counties is voluntary, and if the opt-in occurs, these communities would make remittances to support the schools. Remittance amounts would be based on the RDA's share of the $1.7 billion for the 2011-2012 year and an RDA's share of the $400 million in the 2012-2013 year. Future remittances would be related to the issuance of debt by the RDA and help replace a portion of property taxes that would otherwise have gone to the schools. State support for redevelopment, although at a lesser amount than is currently the case, would continue. The plan puts a framework in place that would allow for additional state support for specific types of projects when there is a significant state or regional economic impact. In other words, if a state interest is present, then a project may be eligible for more state financial support. I ask for your aye vote on both of these measures, but first on AB 26.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And permission to ask the question of the author.
Without objection.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could point out, because I'm trying to read at the new amended analysis here, are these bills double jointed in any way?
It's not technically double joining, but it's contingent enactment. So you can't, the impact is you can't have one without the other.
In the specific language, though, if one passes and one did not for some reason, how can you point to the language in there that shows they're tied together?
I'll pull it out if you give me a moment.
Thank you. Second one, too, I'm wondering, is there any reforms at all in eminent domain to prohibit a kilo-style taking? Any reforms whatsoever in these two bills that knock out kilo-style takings, eminent domain takings?
That's part of the reform. This action does not prevent. In fact, we are assuming there's going to be a number of reforms moving forward.
But nothing in this language, in either one of these bills,
in this language,
stop eminent domain takings at all. And is there reforms at all whatsoever in this language that basically reforms blight or other problems that have been associated in the past with RDA?
Say that again.
Is there any language in these two bills at all that reform any kind of blight or any kind of definitions of those type of things?
There are several legislative bills moving through the process that deal with that issue, and that's a very important issue that we're committed to working on.
But neither one of these two bills have that language in it, correct?
No, correct.
Okay, thank you. My own time, Madam Speaker.
And may I answer your other question about?
Oh, sure. Please.
Okay. Your question about the double joining the language, turn your attention to page 55 of the bill, section 14. It says quite clearly, this act shall take effect contingent on the enactment of Assembly Bill 27 of the 2011-2012 year. And I can bring that to you right now. It's the last page of the bill.
Okay, thank you. I will relook it up. I have maybe a different copy of the page numbers won't lined up, but we'll do that in the sidebar. Thank you.
Okay.
On my own time, Madam Speaker, I'd just like to say, a lot of us Republicans want to see reform in eminent domain. We don't like some of the bad examples that have been used in the past. We see this as a strong economic tool, but there's nothing in this bill that protects small business or churches from the takings of cities or counties to create other things that we would not consider a public event like a school or a road. This is strictly a money grab, switching from money for the other. This is not really an optional thing. If you look at the language, there's language in there that says if there's a lawsuit that challenges this, that the redevelopment agency is prohibited from issuing new bonds or other notes of security, so they're not even allowed to challenge this in court under the current language of this. We're out forfeiting. So I would urge no vote.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And since we are taking up 26 and 27X more or less together, let me address them both as a little bit of a package. We understand from the author this is, quote, not an assault on RDA, close quote. Therein lies a large chunk of the Republican problem with these two pieces of legislation. We just established there is no kilo-type reform in either of these bills. RDAs do need substantial reform, if not entire elimination, because of the abuses that we've seen with RDA agencies throughout the state. But when we visited this question last time, we were told, don't worry, RDA is really not going away, it's coming back. You can vote to get rid of it now, but don't worry, your districts aren't going to be left without RDA, it's just coming back. We were asked to buy a pig and a poke. We didn't know what we were buying, and now we do see it with Assembly Bill 27X. I think our position last time, no, we are not going to blindly abolish RDA until we know what replaces it, if anything, is vindicated when we see 27X. Earlier today, we had talk of fantasy budgets and once more talk of unicorns. My friends, I think I saw this in an episode of The Sopranos. Nice little RDA you've got there. It would be a shame if anything happens to it. And that's what's being asked of us here. Let's get rid of RDAs, that's 26, a bill I can support. But, you know, if you pay us $1.7 billion, we'll let you continue, and that's 27X. They're joined. Together, they're bad policy. I'd urge a no vote on both because of this bait and switch, because of the vindication we see from what was given to us last time, because of the utter cynicism of 27X. But at least to my colleagues on my side of the aisle, and maybe this is what I'll do, lay off on 26X, send the signal that RDAs need a good, hard, solid look, that we need kilo reform, that we need to make sure these agencies don't continue to violate liberties, don't continue to unnecessarily tax. But let's not go for the bait and switch. Let's not buy the insurance policy that Tony Soprano is selling us. 27X is a bad bill, needs to be opposed. The combination is just cynical. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Portantino.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I just rise because I take offense at the reference to the Sopranos. As a proud Italian American, I resent that, and I would respectfully ask the commenter to make an apology to Italian Americans in California.
Mr. Wagner, do you want to apologize?
I will apologize to any Italian Americans who are not in the mafia and engaged in insurance scams.
Ms. Gaines. Oh. Mr. Wagner.
My apology, if one is needed, is sincere. My reference is certainly not one that no one in this room gets. My reference is not to suggest, and I think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, especially one who seems to be extraordinarily outraged over this for reasons I don't understand, my reference is not lost on anyone here. This is not an attack on anyone. This bill is a bait and switch. This bill is exactly what we've seen.
Ms. Gaines. Ms. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back to the bill, specifically AB 26. Elimination is reform. RDAs were meant to be temporary. Redevelopment may have started out with good intentions, but it has morphed into a property-hungry, debt-ridden, hidden government which subsidizes private business.
All right, guys.
Okay, we are going to start the time clock again. We're going to continue, members. Ms. Gaines.
Okay, AB 26 specifically. Elimination is reform, and RDAs were meant to be temporary. Redevelopment may have started out with good intentions, but has morphed into property-hungry, debt-ridden, hidden government, which subsidizes private businesses at the expense of schools, police, and fire. This should be one of the most bipartisan bills before the House. On the Democrat and progressive side, RDAs have fundamentally failed to produce the promised affordable housing. On the Republican side, RDAs run on eminent domain and allow governments to pick winners and losers in the marketplace, subsidized by the state. When you have Jerry Brown, Bill Lockyer, and Tom McClintock agree with the need to eliminate redevelopment, we have a true bipartisan winner. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. This is an unusual thing for me. I find myself conflicted. When I first ran for office, I had no idea what redevelopment agencies were, and I had people bending my ear from both sides, and it's clear that we all know of cases, very well publicized cases of abuses. At the same time, in my district, we've got an Air Force base that no developer in their right mind would ever touch because of the remediation required to get rid of the solvents and the EPA cleanup and all those sorts of issues. But right now, we have taken a dormant, non-producing airport and we have turned it into thousands and thousands of jobs. And right now, with 2.5 million Californians out of work, I don't think we should kill one of the only and one of the last programs we have to actually take some of our sales tax revenue and turn it into income tax revenue through the vehicle of private investment. I think over time there are many success stories. There are reforms that need to be done, but they are not in this bill. This bill is clearly a money grab. It is being done in the context of the budget. And so I think we should look at it in that regard and vote on it in that regard and come back on a sunny day, on a clear day, and revisit redevelopment, because I think this is one of the few times that I have heard bipartisan debate where there are people on both sides of the aisle who feel very strongly that we are not addressing this in the right way, even though I bet there's a lot of common ground we could find. But I don't think that we should put 300,000 private sector jobs at risk when we have 2.5 million Californians out of work. Half of our revenues to the state come from people's personal income tax. Let's get more people working. Let's not assault RDAs or enterprise zones. Let's actually balance the budget by cutting our spending down to what our revenues are. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, a difficult time, and I speak with a passion. I've dedicated a good part of my adult life to fighting to protect private property rights. Worked with the Farm Bureau and the Howard Jarvis taxpayers and the California Alliance to Protect Private Property that I founded to put forth Prop 98 that would have gotten rid of that onerous, terrible Kelo New London decision. The League of Cities, collaborating with the redevelopment folks, put a lot of money on Prop 99, and they won that battle. Thus, these out-of-control RDAs have not been reined in and redirected for their excesses. Many work very well. Many in the district that I represent work very well. But a number of things attend these RDAs over the years. They accrue an obscene $5.2 billion in tax increments. Now, Prop 27 takes $1.7 this year to help with our budget. Now, I don't believe in any way, because of the encumbering that cities have done of those revenues, that 1.7 is ever going to be realized. That something well less than that, maybe so. But what the offering is in Prop 27 is $400 million in subsequent years that they would give up. But we achieve absolutely no reforms. Hence, I would argue for a yes vote on 26 and say stop it, because only if you stop it will there ever be any opportunity to reform it. As long as they have that strength, they're going to run roughshod over private property in our communities, and these excesses will continue. There will be subsequent reform bills. 27 will not at all be the last that we see this year, I assure you. But it does not solve the problem. It is not representative of reform that is needed. This is an opportunity to, with 26, a club on the head to get the attention and get the reforms in subsequent bills.
Mr. Norby.